Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. John Dehlin. It is October 26th, 2021, and we are super excited to have back in studio again for another episode in our series called The Gift of the Mormon Faith Crisis, the Margi Dehlin. Hey, Margi.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
And we also just always love having my co-host, your court jester, Carah Burrell. Carah,
Hello.
welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited for this one. I love anything Margi has to say, but this topic, who doesn't need to hear this?
Yeah.
So it's going to be good.
That's kind.
Yeah. So let me just give a quick introduction. For those of you who don't know, me, Margi, and Natasha, a couple years ago, created a podcast called The Gift of the Mormon Faith Crisis. You can find it at mormonfaithcrisis.com. This is not a commercial. This is a free YouTube channel and podcast that's got over 70 hours of free coaching. And we put that out there just because we knew so many people needed help and we could never help them all. But we're always stunned at how many people don't know about this resource and don't use it. And so we decided that we would do, a weekly or every other week episode where we're focused on Mormon Stories podcast, not just on deconstructing Mormonism, church history, truth claims, calling the church to accountability, but we would also do regular content focused on positivity, on healing, and growth. And that's, Margi, that's your wheelhouse, true?
Yes.
Margi's very succinct. So there's an episode that we did. So let me give a little background. One of the things that kept Margi and I in the church probably 13 years after we lost our faith was parenting. We had sort of bought into the idea that we learned from the church, ironically, that you can't raise happy, healthy kids outside of Mormonism. That if you try to raise your kids outside of Mormonism or outside of a high demand religion, that that they wouldn't have spirituality, they wouldn't have community, they wouldn't have friends, and most importantly, they wouldn't have morality, and they wouldn't be able to become healthy, happy kids. Now, I know that that's offensive to all the non-Mormons in the world and to a lot of people who have left the church and have raised amazing kids, but that was the conditioning and the feelings that we had. So because Margi reads like 2 or 3 books a week, and because she's super into self-improvement and parenting, Margi went to the best source she could find on parenting. And that source is a woman named ShefaliTsabary, Shefali, Shefali, Sabary, Tsabary. ShefaliTsabary has at least 3 books that we love. Conscious Parenting.
It's actually called The Conscious Parent.
The Conscious Parent.
Mm-hmm. Out of Control.
Out of Control, and The Awakened Family. Those are the 3 books. Carah is going to write those in the show notes right now. And basically think of it as secular Buddhism or Eckhart Tolle meets parenting. It's basically a secular Buddhist approach to parenting, and it's called Conscious Parenting. Now, Margi studied this in depth. She taught me a lot that she learned. I read some books too. And we put up an episode on the Gift of the Mormon Faith Crisis that Carah is also going to put in the show notes called Conscious Parenting. It's a 3-part episode on the Gift of the Mormon Faith Crisis that if you care about parenting after losing your Orthodox faith in Mormonism or after leaving your high demand religion, and you want to be the best parent you can, this is the best resource that we know of to help guide, to help present a new framework for parenting. So that's there. This episode isn't going to replace that. This episode is to do 2 things. It's to highlight that resource exists, so you will all go and watch it if you care about parenting, but also, and now this is kind of a pivot to today's specific episode, I would say that today, this month in the lives of me and Margi is a bit of a tender month. And I think that's an okay place to start this episode. This episode is called When All Else Fails. Emotional milkshakes, is that what you're calling it, Margi?
Yes.
Yeah, emotional milkshakes when all else fails. This is not going to be a super long episode, But the purpose of this episode is for Margi to share with you a little bit about her father, who passed away about 5 years ago. I think this month is the 5th anniversary of his passing. And Margi wants to tell you a little bit about her dad, not for any sort of like self-glorifying reasons, but she's going to tell you about her dad and a story about her dad and how that story has influenced her approach to parenting within the context of conscious parenting. And so this episode is called Conscious Parenting, Emotional Milkshakes, or Conscious Parenting When All Else Fails, Emotional Milkshakes. And it's basically the most important lesson that Margi has learned about parenting that she learned from her dad that fits within the conscious parenting paradigm. Now, Margi, I'm going to kind of hand it over to you and ask, is there anything else you would want to add about that introduction before we jump in?
Only that within the conscious parenting model, this would be, just like you said, like a layer, an overlay over that model around there are different shifts that oftentimes we highlight in conscious parenting. And this would be an overlay over the shift from control to connection. So that's kind of where
and they have no
falls.
idea what you're talking about. So do you want to set that up?
They may, but this is, it will appear in the story somewhat, is just oftentimes in parenting when we feel desperate, when we feel emotionally overwhelmed with a situation involving a child, we oftentimes, our knee-jerk reaction is to try to control in some way. And that can mean a lot of different things. It can mean that you're trying to find a consequence for behavior. You're trying to have the child go away from you so you can emotionally cool down. It can be that you're trying to fix the problem for the child because it's so painful for you to see them suffering. It can involve a lot of things. And you'll notice in this story that there's going to be none of that. And that doesn't mean there's not times and places, and I'm going to go into that in a sort of disclaimer kind of way in a minute. It only means that, for me, particularly at this time of year, I feel a little bit tender as I remember my dad. And I often think, I'm going to get emotional, but as a parent, what will my kids remember about me? And this is one thing that I remember about my dad, and I wonder if in this moment he had chosen control, how that would have changed things. So this isn't to say a sweeping thing about this, it's just to give a story about what it meant to me in that moment to have a moment of connection instead of control.
Yeah, because I think we all, raised Mormon, we come by it honestly thinking that rules and control and punishment are the way to raise a kid.
Yes.
And ShefaliTsabary in Conscious Parenting says connection, emotional connection with your kid is way more important than control. Mm-hmm. And this story is your best way to illustrate that. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
So, take it away. I've got some pictures of your dad, and when you're ready, let's show them. But go ahead and do your outline and let me know when you want to show some pictures. Okay?
Yeah.
And I'll cue to the pictures.
Okay, that makes sense. So before I start, I kind of feel like, first I want to give a trigger warning because I am going to be talking about myself in high school a little bit and what was going on. And so I will be talking about an eating disorder. So I care about the audience and I want to put that out there. So take care of yourselves. If this is not a good time, a good subject for you, feel free to just go ahead and skip this one. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing, I always, when I'm talking about painful things with regard to myself or my story, I also like to just do a couple quick disclaimers here. The first disclaimer is around privilege. I think that's an important thing to just sort of acknowledge myself as a white, cisgender human being. that also had all the benefits of just sort of a stable economic upbringing. And I did have two parents that I feel like really did care about our well-being. So just going to put that out there, that I acknowledge that as I'm going to tell this story, right? And then secondly, just a note about eating disorders, that in telling this story, I just want to acknowledge that the risk and danger of eating disorders is real. That's something I acknowledge, and I acknowledge therapy being a key component to that. It was for me in healing, so I'm not saying anything about that. I did get therapy, and my healing took a number of years. And so my story is not meant to say that acceptance is the magic thing that cures eating disorders, cures any type of problem that you're having with your child. So for me, this I really want to say that this is an answer to me oftentimes wondering, in my children's darkest moments, which we've had, I feel like with almost all of our children now, what will they remember? What is it they'll remember? And this is something that I remember about my dad during one of my darkest moments. Okay?
Beautiful.
Okay, so to kind of start, I think we're going to go back, and I'm just going to give you a bit of a snapshot of me in high school and kind of where this takes place in the situation. So back in high school, you would have found me competitive running. I started... Oh, sorry.
Let's show some pictures of your dad, and maybe introduce your dad. So let's show a picture.
Okay.
You just look at the picture and kind of tell people a little bit about your dad.
So my dad, what would I say about my dad? My dad was like a deeply feeling person, which I view as kind of unusual. He was very open with his emotions. He was moved by beauty. So he was moved by movies, music, nature, human beings. He oftentimes would cry openly in daily moments of life. He was a poetry lover. He was an athlete, really athletic, grew up playing football, played track. He was great at tennis. He was great at just a lot of, so very like in his body and movement oriented. He was a psychiatrist. So he, went to school at Haverford College and actually graduated with a major in literature early. He went to 3 years, and then he went to Yale Medical School for his medical training there. And he was a member of the Glee Club, which a singing club. He had actually got a scholarship for that. And he used to sing me lullaby songs. He would play with us as kids, a very mindful, present human in our lives. So that is my dad.
Very fun, very jovial. He loved to play the piano. He would play the piano well into the night. He loved to sing. A very beautiful combination of kindness and love and sensitivity and intellect. A really rare combination.
Yes. And it was interesting because he really worked with the kind of the darkest things in human nature. He worked with a population that I think...
severely mentally ill, murders even, right?
Yep. Really with, there were times when he worked with those who were cast-offs, who had, yes, in the court system, been given the insanity plea and were locked away. And so it's this foil because he worked with kind of this really heavy kind of content in his life, but he came home and was very playful and very just, I would say, present. And it's not like he was just light because he always acknowledged, I think, deeper things, but it was just a really rare kind of human.
So the next picture.
I love that picture because I'm looking at him, which is very...
That's you as a baby? That's Margi as a baby?
Yeah, that's at my christening.
Okay. And then this next photo, you were about to go into your high school.
So that's a little bit about my dad.
What do they see here?
So here was just meant to say, I'm going to just kind of get into a couple, just who I am at this snapshot in time, because I think there is a tendency to view things from the external. So if you were looking at the external Margi, what you would have seen is that I was a top runner in the state of Florida. I ran both cross country and track. I trained all year round. I was going to early morning seminary. I had to get up early, so I usually got up at around 4:30 to meet at 5:30 for seminary. And it wasn't unusual for me to get to bed at 11, so kind of going to bed at 11 p.m. and getting up at 4:30. It was just, I worked really hard in school. I feel like I had to work really hard for my grades. In my family, I didn't feel particularly smart. I had really smart, really intelligent, like school successful siblings. I did not identify that way. I always felt like I kind of had to really work hard. So I was working really hard at school. And then in my home, I was the oldest daughter. So I spent a lot of, I was like a very cooperative kind of second mother. I babysat a lot. I cleaned up the house a lot. I did summer camps in the summer to help give my mom breaks where I would teach my siblings and have like a whole curriculum of like, learning and fun and crafts in the summer. So I feel like those are the basics. Do you think I left anything out? So nothing really important with the, just to show.
Talk about your level of, talk about running, if you don't mind, talk about running cross country and your level of success and then how that developed into.
I feel comfortable just saying I was a top runner in the state, and that required me training, a good part of the year. And I think, I recently won a Pride Award, which is a writing award. Like if you looked at me, if you looked at me from the outside, I think people looked and said, what a successful child, right? And yet, on the inside, I was really like disappearing. And I think that's a key component. That's why I wanted to say those things, is I think as parents, we can, and this goes both ways, with a successful child and with a child who is more independent and comes across as what we might say like the rebel child or the black sheep child. Like there's pain either way, there's loss either way, and it all stems from kind of parents and what they expect of children and how children learn to navigate that. But successful children oftentimes are suffering children.
Yeah. So you were suffering.
Yes, and so I was suffering in a lot of ways. I think I felt a lot of pressure. I think I felt a lot of innate unworthiness that I was trying to compensate for. And just trying to grow up and kind of grapple with who I was in our family system, who I was in the world. And amidst that, I developed an eating disorder. And it started manifesting when I was a sophomore in high school. I feel like it kind of peaked when I was a senior in high school, and this is where the story actually takes place. So my senior year, I feel like everything was kind of hitting a peak. And as far as like the pressure and the outward expectations and all of those things. And I remember kind of feeling this disconnect. Now I can see this, a disconnect kind of from myself as I was hustling and working so hard, and really became, fixated on what I could control. And I remember randomly one morning waking up for seminary. My dad was always our ride to kind of seminary in the mornings. And I remember hearing something in the kitchen as I was kind of getting ready. And when I came out, my dad had made me a smoothie. And he just handed me the smoothie in a very non-expectant like way. So without expectations, just like with a lot of love. handed me the smoothie and walked away. And I was like, okay, well, thanks, Dad. And I poured the smoothie down the sink, and then we went off in the car. Well, morning after morning, he would get up and make the smoothie. And sometimes he would leave it on the counter and just walk. He would never pressure me to drink it. And when he handed it to me, or when he put it down, his eyes were always soft. And he kind of had like a little stillness there for a minute. And he would walk away, and morning after morning, I would just pour it out. And he knew it. I know he knew that I wasn't drinking it. And after a while, I remember as a teen thinking, what is he doing? Like, he knows I'm not drinking it. Why is he making me the smoothie? And what I did know at the time was I felt close to my dad. What I did know when he was handing it, I felt like, you know, he made space for me. But it wasn't until actually years later, when I had a couple teens of my own who were suffering. And my dad finally, you know, he had a kind of a long illness, but when he passed away, it really hit me in those moments of seeing my teens, what he was doing. And I feel like what he was doing was, you know, like if I could say what I, now looking back, felt in his eyes, it was, I see you, and I see your suffering, and I'm here with you. You're not alone, and you're worthy of love. I felt that. That's what I felt, you know, from his eyes. And so that is something that I don't know that I got right always when our older two were teens and really suffering. But as I came to really integrate this is something I wish I had known and really integrated earlier, which is why I thought to kind of share it at this point. And I think I've done a little bit better as they've become young adults and had their own sort of, because it oftentimes, you know, those moments can kind of continue. And with my younger two, I feel like I've been able to integrate that a little better, of this idea of when my children are suffering, when they're lost or disconnected from themselves. I want them to feel those things. I want them to feel like, I'm here for you. You're not alone. And I will be here to remind you of all the things that are lovable and magical about you. And me as a parent, I will be here to just remind you how lovable you are. So that's kind of the idea. And that's why I call it an emotional milkshake, because I never...
Smoothie.
Or smoothie. I
Is
never...
it smoothie or milkshake?
It's either.
Okay.
Because I don't know what he put in them. I'm not sure they were entirely healthy or whatever. So pick your pleasure. But I never drank them, but they fed me anyway. At a time when I was starving from those things, from the lack of feeling those things that he offered me. So, and I just do want to point out, like, I think it's normal and natural in parenting to show up for the successes or for those moments that your child has accomplished something or feels proud of something, but to me, this really stuck out because this was a moment for me where I felt vulnerable and I didn't feel like I had it all together. And so to have someone show up with that message when you're actually not feeling like you're in the middle of a hustle or in the middle of, you know, where you're not wearing kind of that armor of excellence, that really penetrated, that really was able to get through to me in a way that I don't think control would have. I had already had enough of the control kind of aspects at that point. So anyway, that's my offering of a story.
And what has always been powerful to me about that story is just the vision of your dad making the milkshake, giving it to you with full love and with that love in his eyes, watching you dump it into the sink. I think sometimes you dumped it out while he was watching you. And then to know that he didn't guilt you, he didn't shame you, he didn't try and control you. And then he would come back the next day and make the milkshake or make the smoothie. And then he'd do it again. And he would just
It's the showing
come
up.
back and
Yep.
come back and come back without getting mad, without trying to control, and with full love that you felt.
And it wasn't about him in any way. It wasn't like, not in any way was it like, hey, I'm making these milkshakes for you and I'm using, like, this is money and you're like throwing it away, or like, how long does it take? Here I am. Like, he never made it about him. It just wasn't about that. It was about him seeing me. It was about me and what he saw.
Because I think sometimes as a parent, and maybe even as a Mormon parent, we think, as I kind of said at the beginning, we think it's about giving the rules and then enforcing the rules and then punishing if they don't obey the rules and then like getting angry or frustrated and vocalizing that anger and frustration. And I think teens and adults, I don't think that's what they need. I think kids know by the time they're a teen or an adult what you want, what's right, what's expected of them. And I think they're just going through the struggle at that point. And I don't think maybe what we don't naturally learn in that control expectation paradigm is that the barometer for success with our teens or our kids or even our adult kids is emotional connection. Do they feel our unconditional love? Even if they screw up, do they know we're going to love them anyway? Sometimes they're even testing us to see whether we're going to love them unconditionally. And then do we show up? Do we have that unconditional love? And most importantly, we always talk about this in conscious parenting. The barometer of successful parenting for me now is, are my kids comfortable telling me if they try marijuana, telling me if they have a sexual experience, telling me if they screw up or lie or make a mistake? It's not, for me, successful parenting isn't, do my kids not make mistakes? I think that was the Mormon paradigm.
Right.
How do I keep my kids from having sex? How do I keep my kids from trying alcohol or trying drugs? They're going to do that stuff or not. We were kicked out of the church years ago. Some of our kids have tried that stuff and some of them just have chosen not to. And kids are going to do that or not. And so what you have to realize is you nagging them or trying to control them probably isn't going to have much of an effect. Control and criticism and nagging and punishment, right, is probably just going to make them want to lie to you, number one, hide things from you, number two, and three, not ever want to talk to you. And that's the consequences of trying to do control. And that's what ShefaliTsabary helped me learn. So what's the alternative if it's not about create the rules, enforce the rules, and punish and drive your kids away emotionally so that they lie and hide and don't ever want to talk to you? What's the alternative? The alternative is showing up with these emotional smoothies such that they feel like, man, I'm trying to figure out life, but I know I can always talk to dad. I know I can always talk to mom, and they're just going to love me and show up and support me. They trust me. They believe in me. And I can always go to them and let them know, man, I was sexually active last night. And it's like, okay, well, what was that like? How did you feel? How did they feel? And you can then, if you have that emotional connection, you're in the conversation. And that's where you can have influence. You only have influence with emotional connection. If you have animosity and tension and you're creating sort of the backfire effect with your kids, not only do you not have influence, but you're probably creating the opposite behavior that you want through rebellion. And so the barometer, the needle that you watch is emotional connection. Do my kids feel safe talking to me? Do they feel safe being vulnerable with me? And that's how you know. And they may not. Like some kids don't want that or some kids won't. So that doesn't mean you're failing, because some kids may not want or be able to do that at different points in their life. I'm just saying this is what I've learned to do to keep my eye on the ball. The ball is no longer do my kids try beer or try a puff of marijuana. It's do my kids feel safe with me and want to talk to me.
I totally agree. And I would add, do my children feel safe connecting with themselves? If my kids are connecting with themselves, with what they love, with what they want out of life, and that can look really, really different from what you and I want, John, then I feel like that they are more likely to be able to create a life that means something to them. And as it turns out, that is really important at this stage of the game. You know, coming out of a pandemic, I just think there is a larger disconnect with teens and young adults, you know, than ever. And I just see them doing a lot of remapping in their own lives as to what type of lives they want to live, what it's going to look like, and just offering your kids full support to trust themselves, to connect with themselves, and to start exploring. Not even to have to know, but to feel empowered that they're worth the exploration and they're worth connecting to. So I would just add that. And another thing is this, I did think about this as a when all else fails, but truly all our kids deserve a sprinkling of this. And it reminds me of, I think it was Toni Morrison who said, you know, about parents, do their eyes light up when you walk in the room, or, you know, around their children? And so I just feel like sprinkle this stuff around. Like I did create sort of some ideas around where this would be particularly helpful, but like I just feel like every child deserves to see parents whose eyes are completely lighted up by them, you know?
It's beautiful. And if you're trying to control your kids, if you're disappointed in your kids, if you're constantly nagging your kids and you're caught in this power struggle, they're not going to feel that your eyes are lighting up when they come in the room. They're going to feel like, I'm in the middle of a battle. I'm in the middle of a power struggle and I hate my parents. I mean, I think that's the risk potentially.
Right. And I think overall, and not to go too far into conscious parenting and, you know, but what I will say is, you know, if you want to influence, if you want to let's just say maximize this idea that you can influence your kids, control by nature, not only is it behavior focused, so your child doesn't feel seen when you're like, you know, leaning into control, but it is a natural disconnector, a disconnector from you as you use control means, because kids are like us. When you have a spouse that's using control on you, how do you feel? How, you know, what is your knee-jerk reaction? Do you feel seen? Children aren't different than adults. Their emotional profiles aren't different than yours. And so what you find is that you create this disconnect and then you lose influence. Why? Because they don't trust you, right? That's what happens. They disconnect from you. You may get a change in the behavior short term, but what you've lost is this direct connection with your child. And what your child has likely lost is a connection to themselves. And that's the real tragedy. It's not about the parent. It's actually about the child learning to value their experience first through you and then through themselves. And that's the real loss.
I love it. So let's check in. We are live streaming to both Facebook and YouTube. Carah, it's so awesome to have Carah here for a lot of reasons, but one is she's able to monitor the comments. Carah, let's check in with you. I want to invite commenters. If you have questions, comments, stories, we would love to take advantage of this live stream to share whatever questions you have for Margi or us, or things you want to, lessons or things you want to experience. Please share them in the comments. But Carah, what do you see in the comments?
So Robbie and Grace both said that they're crying and really connecting with your story. And Lisa said that she loves Margi and reached out to about coaching therapy by email, and that you were very kind and helpful to her and that she's good for now. But that little interaction for Lisa, a total stranger from both of you, was enough to keep her afloat. And I just want to echo that a little bit of Margi goes a long way. So, and then Madeline said, this is touching to hear. I think that we can have negative or positive sentiments override with what we remember. I have negative sentiments override. Sounds like emotional connection is what can change that. So I connected with those comments, and those were just what was on my mind so far that I wanted to read. And yeah, everyone's just really digging this. And I think this is invaluable information and something we all need. And we talked even during the retreat about a lot of this is kind of parenting yourself, right? So even if you don't have kids, it's still valuable for everyone.
Yeah.
Carah, when you say parenting yourself, tell listeners what you mean by that.
Well, the way that I connected it, at least, you can correct me if I'm wrong if this is not what you meant, when we were at the retreat, for people who didn't have kids, that you're listening to this conscious parenting thing and you can kind of understand the pitfalls of your parents, see them as products of their conditioning, and see yourself as just a more conscious person as the way that you interact in the world, even if it's not with kids. But you can still see the way that you were conditioned to act a certain way, what you missed out on, what you need, and have a lot of grace for parents of mine that didn't have access to these types of tools, and just parent my own thoughts, just really working through and untangling some thoughts that are not helpful.
Love it.
So,
Margi, what does reparenting yourself mean to you in this context, in addition to what Carah said?
Yeah, I love what you said. I think you really, really nailed it, honestly. I think, so let's use this situation. Let's use something really concrete, like how my dad showed up for me in that moment. Let's say you didn't have a dad or even a parent that ever offered you that. And that has been rare for you in your life. So reparenting would look like you having a moment in relationship to another human. It can be a partner. It can be yourself, that maybe you feel like you failed on something or disappointed yourself in something, and you're hearing your parent's voice, or you're hearing a really judgmental, aggressive voice in your head about that. It would be that you show up, that you're able to recognize that voice. You're able to recognize a little bit of where that comes from and say, I deserve softness. And you show up as my dad did, and you reparent yourself. So you would show up saying, hey, I'm with you. You're not alone in this. You're allowed to make mistakes. You showed up as best you could. You're more than what you do. Your value is in who you are, and I'm here. And let's like comfort you right now. You deserve a soft place to fall right now, And so that's what that would look like. And honestly, I'm really grateful I had it with my dad, and my dad's no longer here. And so a way that he lives on is that I do that with myself now. It's sort of like, ideally a parent would show you how, but a parent doesn't have to show you how in order for you to show up for yourself in ways that can feel comforting, in ways that can feel reinforce your own worthiness.
Don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. You know that phrase that'll, the voice that you speak to your kids in will become their inner monologue, that kind of idea?
Exactly.
And I kind of think of that with what you just said as well, is that parent yourself, and the voice that you talk to yourself should be as kind as possible, and that you should give yourself the type of parenting in your mind, the leeway that you're still learning and you're still understanding. And that's what I say to my kids, is I go easy on them and I say, it's okay, you're still learning, I'm not mad. And then if I mess up, they go, it's okay, Mom, you're still learning.
Yeah.
It's like the voice that we talk in,
I love that.
Just a little bit of that kind of love goes a long way. So just going easy on each other.
Yeah, I love that. That's beautiful. I think there's this idea of embodiment too. I think children do watch parents and how they handle their own, when they make mistakes, or when they disappoint themselves or and so I think children are watching. And so there's this idea of also, I want to treat myself well for me, but I also want to treat myself well because I want my children to learn from me that what are mistakes? Things we didn't know yet. I mean, we're built for that. We're made for a lot of things we don't know yet. So I even have a little bit of a hard time with mistakes. This idea of mistakes.
The idea of mistakes.
The idea of mistakes.
How about it's just all learning? Is that what you're saying? It's all learning. There is no sin. There are no mistakes. There's just learning.
That's right. There are things you didn't know that if you had known, you would have done differently. But the point is you didn't. You didn't know. And we're all that way.
I love it.
I love it. And another thing that you said at the retreat last weekend that really stuck with me is that word embodiment. Is just how much of these things that we can know, but if I don't apply it and think of a way to embody it, especially modeling it for my kids, then it's just a lot of nice ideas. And I'm going to post in the show notes the episode that we did on grounding, staying grounded in difficult times. And I've taken a lot of those lessons, the role plays and things that we've done, and the things that we want for ourselves to stay grounded in those difficult moments, saying them out loud when I'm frustrated with my kids. And I'll say, I'm feeling really stressed right now and I'm feeling really hot and I'm going to go in the other room. And I literally like monologue to my kids, what's going on? I'm trying to ground myself. And I want to make it so that that's when I ask them to stay grounded, that they know that that's what mom does too. And it's just like natural vernacular of our house. So I got that from you.
I really love that. That means so much. I think back to your thing about reparenting too, John, is I think sometimes when we think about ourselves as adults, we have sometimes less compassion for ourselves as adults, that can be a barrier. But I think if we could just understand that when we're suffering, a lot of times we're actually children again. You know, we feel a lot of similar things as we did when we were children. It might take us back to times when we were children and we felt the same way. I think sometimes if you can visualize yourself as a child sometimes in moments where you're suffering, it can turn something on in you that otherwise can feel hard to reach.
Love it. So a couple comments, Margi, I'm going to read, and me, you, and Carah can respond. So Grace Johnson writes, actually Mark Fuentes writes, great, now I feel bad about getting after my kid for sneaking my laptop to play Roblox. I don't know if he's joking or if he's serious, but I mean, there's this idea of like catching your kid, you know, looking at their phone when they shouldn't, or being on the internet after hours, or even catching your kid looking at porn, you know, which is like every Mormon parent's nightmare. What would you say about, you know, someone like Mark who feels like they've been reactive with their kids when they find their kid actually doing something wrong? So there's kind of what he should think about his mistakes in the past, but then there's how we might approach finding out now if we catch our kids, quote, catch our kids doing something wrong, quote, wrong. How might we approach that now? Any thoughts on that, oh wise Margi?
It's messy, isn't it? I just feel like it's innately a messy endeavor, this thing of parenting. So I'm all about softness. I think there's a reason why conscious parenting is parent-focused and not child-focused. So I think in this case, first of all, understanding, you know, what went off in you for yourself when you found your child, I think, with the computer. So conscious parenting is not anything goes. There are enlightened boundaries, you know, that are usually around things like safety for the child, and they're very age appropriate. And the difference is how you navigate those. So in this case, maybe I would just say, you know, repair. If you feel like that went in a way that didn't, you know, let's just say represent your values or what type of relationship you want to have with your child, you can go back in. And part of conscious parenting is a nice, well-done apology for whatever you feel. It could be like, I feel like I was really reactive in that moment and I want you to feel safe with me. Can we talk about the computer, and let's talk about kind of how we want that to go? What are you feeling about it? This is kind of an enlightened boundary work, but there is always room for repair. I find children, an apology goes a long way with children, acknowledging what's yours to hold. And I think it's a key component to just emotional maturity, honestly, as parents. So never hesitate to go back in, lean back in with your child, apologize, and then use some enlightened boundary principles of where you hear your child, you validate what was going on for your child. Your child actually has a valid perspective that you can hear, and then you share yours. And then you actually you move into kind of more conflict resolution, or how to kind of navigate some type of compromise moving forward, or some type of boundary where kind of at best, both of you are heard. And that doesn't mean that your child gets the computer. That just means your child gets to be heard and validated for their experience. And then you decide, on some level, is this an enlightened boundary? Is this something that, you really need to boundary? Or is this something that on some level you can just connect with your child? And that's the art of it. I wish there was like something more hardcore, but there really is an art to it where we as parents know our children best. And yeah.
It's hard. It's hard. Grace writes, since leaving the church, I know my parents still love me, but my dad has never looked at me the same. Once I shared a spiritual thought and saw a look in my dad that I don't usually see anymore. So what happens when you have a faith crisis as an adult and your parents are still believing, and now you see that the glimmer in their eye has gone away and they no longer see you like they used to? What would you say to Grace?
And I don't have to answer all these. You guys are extremely wise,
you're
too.
the guest. I'll
Yes?
jump in, but you take the first steps.
And you all, I feel like Carah would have amazing things to say as well.
Okay.
About this. I mean, what I would say is that's loss. That's to be grieved. And, that's no small thing. And I think, that kind of represents another shift in conscious parenting around the external, where we really validate, we really are kind of reinforced and programmed to value external validation, approval, how people view us, people pleasing. It's all a way to feel love and to feel love we don't have for ourselves, honestly. And so this shift from external to internal, this is now a practice for you where hopefully you're going to, and it's not easy, where you're going to simultaneously grieve someone who's alive, grieve a relationship in the way it used to show up, and also start practicing providing yourself some of that love that you used to look to your dad for. And I don't say it sounds simple, and it's anything but simple, but you deserve that. And I've heard like this, it's super trite, but this idea that the longest relationship you'll be in your life is your relationship with you. So I think in Mormonism, particularly as women, we outsource and we're all about our relationship with others. And it can feel out of control. Then you're always dependent on these people who are outside of you and how they view you, or if you're showing up in the way they want. And that can feel like rocky waters. But if you can lean in and start going internal, you can create quite a calm sea for yourself of the love and how you know yourself and how you understand, where your wounds are and why they're there. And it can offer you something quite beautiful.
I'll second that. Like when I think about Richard Rohr, R-O-H-R, we can put a link to that in the show notes. He's got a book called Falling Upward, and he talks about the first half of life and second half of life. Think of it as like Pleasantville before, everything was black and white and then it turned into color. Or the Truman Show before Truman knew he was in a fake reality, and then after. Or The Village, when people were in the village thinking it was a 15th century village, and then there's before you're awakened and after. And before you're awakened, of course you depend on your parents for your ego and your sense of security and safety and self-confidence. Because as an infant and as a toddler and as a child and as a teen and even as a young adult, where else are you going to get that? Hopefully you're going to get that at least in part from your parent. So it's natural for us to have our sense of confidence and sense of efficacy tied to our parents' view of us. It's natural. And that's one of the gifts. That's why we call, the Gift of the Mormon Faith Crisis podcast, the Gift of the Mormon Faith Crisis podcast. That's the whole theme of this series and this show, is that there is a huge opportunity here. And I'm just repeating what you said, Margi, but the opportunity is that, yes, it's disappointing to have your parents downgrade you in their eyes. You're no longer Nephi. You're no longer the righteous, spiritual, valiant one in their eyes. But that's not true. What's true is it's an incredible act of integrity and courage to not just lose your faith, to have the courage to investigate, to find out what's true, to have your entire worldview fall apart. And there's a bunch of people who go through that and then they never have the courage to actually tell anyone. And so they just suffer in silence, or they don't have the privilege or the ability. But for courageous people that come out to their parents, that come out to their friends and family and say, I can no longer do this, I no longer believe this, those are all acts of courage and integrity, and they're to be honored and respected. Now, if your parents can't conceptualize your behavior that way, that's because you've kind of left them behind in terms of emotional and intellectual maturity. You've surpassed your parents. And at that point, it's probably not best for your ego, for your efficacy, for your sense of self to be tied and dependent on the views of someone more, less emotionally and intellectually mature than you. So the gift of the faith crisis is you can, over time, get a coach, get a therapist, watch some podcasts, find some good friends. One of the gifts of the Mormon faith crisis is you get to disconnect your source of light, your source of strength from these now emotionally and intellectually immature people. And you get to plug in to a better source for your emotional, for your self-efficacy and for your self-confidence. And the best source of all, this is why Jesus said, the kingdom of God is where? Where is the kingdom of God? Jesus said it. Jesus didn't say the kingdom of God is the Holy Ghost running around. It's not our Father in heaven. Jesus didn't say the kingdom of God is the church of blah, blah, blah. Carah, where did Jesus say the kingdom of God is found?
Within.
I feel like I'm in Sunday school again.
I know, I'm being pedantic.
Best Sunday school ever. Sister Burrell.
Yeah. Yeah, the kingdom of God is within. And what that means is just what you said, Margi. I'm just repeating your brilliance. The kingdom of God is within. Whitney Houston, Carah, this is Carah's favorite, 80s cheesy pop. The greatest love of all. Carah, where is the greatest love of all? The greatest.
I'll do the singing.
Okay.
It's inside.
The greatest love of all.
That no heroes, but that you found that the greatest love of all is
inside of you. Yeah.
Inside of me.
And that sounds cheesy, and it sounds almost glib, like it's pop psychology, new age spirituality. But I can say it's true for me. Like, I love my mom and dad. And if they were to come to me today and say, John, I'm really disappointed that you got excommunicated from the church, and I really think your podcast is not doing good in the earth, I would say, Mom and Dad, I love you so much. How's your health? How are you doing? And thank you for your opinion. I love you. And it would not affect me in the slightest. Now, I'm 52. I'm, 20 years into my faith crisis. So I've had some time and I've done a little work. But you can get there, dear listener and viewer. You can get to the point where you just kind of emotionally pat your parents on the head whenever they don't have that gleam in their eye, whenever they're not looking at you like you're their star child, and you can just kind of grin at them, emotionally pat them on the head, say, I love you, Mom and Dad. I know you're doing the best you can. And then you go to your partner or your friends or yourself and you say, I am so good. I am a bad expletive. I'm amazing. I know who I am, and I'm no longer reliant on my parents for a sense of confidence.
Right on. Yeah. The too long didn't read of that to me is
TLDR.
Yeah, is the focus on what you've gained and not what you've lost. And everything that you guys just said, I think it needs to be like repeated and like with some new age music behind it. It's like a meditation. Because I think we're like having some ESP here, because I also think that's, you guys just said the exact things that were also in my mind. And I'm trying to think of literal times just in the last couple of years that happens with, you know, my parents being really disappointed that I'm not blessing my baby or that I don't take my kids to church. And like John said, it's kind of like, yeah, I know that's your value system, but I'm focusing on what I've gained. I've lost the approval of my parents, but what I've gained is more profound than that, even though it's foundational.
What have you gained, Carah?
The sense that I get to raise my kids with values that are important to me and going to be important to them, and not, like you're saying, an outward structure that they're going to have to live up to for the rest of their life. I didn't bless my son with all of these blessings that he would serve a mission and marry in the temple, where I just had his life laid out for him. That it literally, when I left the church, just realizing my brain and my life was in my own hands and I could figure out my values and lead with empathy and evidence, that gave me a high, just realizing how much power I had. And so gaining that is so intensely wonderful that while it does hurt to have your parents lose the gleam in their eye for you, it really is 20th on the list of things that I think about now because of what I've gained.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah.
Do you feel the same way now, Margi?
I do. And I would also just kind of pose this question, you know, when you were doing all the things and you had the gleam in your dad's eye, how seen were you? Like, how much did he really know you? Because I know for many people within that paradigm, they never felt seen, though. You know, like that you're praying and showing up on Sunday and your children are being baptized and you go to the temple. You know, that's not being known for you. That's not like someone being intimate with you or, you know, sharing your invulnerability with you. So it's also important to be clear with that too, that what exactly you're losing. And then lastly, I'm going to really botch this, but hopefully I'll get the sentiment. Have you read Untamed by chance?
By Glennon Doyle?
Okay.
We talked about it. We talked about it last night.
Did you?
In the interview.
I feel like I have, because people quote it all the time.
There's this one part that I think of.
We'll add that in the show notes.
Where it's basically, and I'll provide it gendered and then I'm going to degender it because I don't think it has to be gendered to be powerful, but where she basically says, when I stopped being an obedient daughter, it was the moment I became an empowered woman. So the moment you stop being this obedient child is the moment you become an empowered human, right?
It's like growing up, basically. Yeah. Sometimes a faith crisis is just growing up. It's becoming emotionally healthy and mature. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and this is a practice. It's not something, so just like Carah was saying, this shows up as you having feelings. Maybe you visit with your dad and those feelings are in you. He doesn't look at me the same. I'm noticing this. And then it's you learning to reframe in the moment, bit by bit, how you want to interpret and frame that happening. It takes time.
Love it. Beck writes, I definitely feel as though post-Mormonism, I definitely feel that post-Mormonism, the fear in my parenting has reduced immensely. It has allowed me to lean into my 15 and 8-year-olds' autonomy. I trust them to know themselves and their needs more. Thank you, Beck, for sharing that.
Love that.
And I want to say that's terrifying for many Mormons. Because we were all raised as Mormons. Most of us were raised as Mormons. The natural man is what? What's the natural man?
An enemy to God and has sinned.
Sister Burrell?
The beginning of, oh, sorry. I forgot to raise my hand. Since the beginning and the foundation of the earth.
Yeah. Yeah, we're taught that our natural selves are an enemy to God. we're taught that the last thing we should do, like imagine an LGBTQ kid, are they taught in Mormonism to like figure out their sexual and gender identity and to follow that? No, they're taught to suppress it, to hide it, to pack it down. We're taught to ignore our internal intrinsic selves, and we're taught to figure out whatever the church teaches and follow the prophet, follow the prophet. So because we're all conditioned that way, now that we're parents, even if we're now no longer believing the church, this idea of learning to have our teens and even our children develop the ability to listen to themselves and trust themselves, this is not intuitive for us. Because for so long we were taught to ignore and pack down ourselves, and that our very core selves are evil. So, number one, congratulations, Beck. But number two, what would you say, Margi, to that post-Mormon parent that's like, I'm terrified to tell my 16-year-old, whose brain isn't even fully formed yet, by the way. Let's just say from a psychological standpoint, our brains aren't fully developed till they're 26. So if a parent says to you, I'm not going to trust my 16-year-old to listen to themselves, they may go get drunk and crash a car or get addicted to whatever or get someone pregnant. What would you say to a parent that's terrified to teach their teen to learn to listen to themselves?
Well, first of all, I'm not arguing with any parent. Like, I am here to hopefully just provide ideas, and whether they resonate or not, I'm going to have people go internal too. So I don't think I mean, are you saying just idea wise what I say to that? Because I think that's real and people should show up where they are. I mean, I can provide a response of, kind of what's lost there. And what's lost there is this idea of a parent actually realizing the fear and anxiety that they have. It's parent-centered. So conscious parenting is about it being about the parent. That the parent actually has been a sponge taking in all these messages about how scary the world is, how depraved we are, what a loss we are to navigate it without some type of external savior who can reach in and make it all right. So you come by it honestly. That's what I would say. And fear and anxiety as drivers, it's no way to live. Not for a teen and not for a parent.
I love it. And Mark goes on to write, how do you enforce boundaries, especially when your kids are trying to provoke you emotionally?
Enlighten boundaries.
Yeah. And I just want to say this, and then I want to hear you respond to Mark. But the point of conscious parenting, so let's just go back to that question I asked you about, like, can you trust your 16-year-old? What if they crash their car? What if they try drugs? What if they have sex? Conscious parenting isn't saying that your kids won't make those types of choices. Many of them probably will. And what we have to retrain our brains to understand is that that's developmentally normal and
Beautiful.
Sometimes even healthy.
Beautiful.
We just did this amazing episode, Carah, last night with this amazing lesbian couple that knew they weren't really attracted to men, in their late teen, early 20s, married men anyway, had several kids, and then later realized after, into their 30s that they were actually attracted to women, right? And what we kind of concluded from that episode, Carah, is how wonderful would it have been if they could have just dated girls in high school and figured out for themselves who they were attracted to. They could have saved their eventual husbands and their children and themselves and people a lot of time and a lot of pain. And so sometimes that experimentation about, like, how do I develop maybe a healthy relationship with alcohol, or how do I develop a healthy relationship with sexuality? That's teenage years and young adult years are the time to do that. And if we take that away from our kids, sometimes it stunts their growth. And I don't think we get that at all because we have this Orthodox Mormon mindset of purity. And so I think the point isn't that conscious parenting will keep your kids from making mistakes. They will or won't make mistakes. They will or won't make some of these choices that you have previously viewed or that you were taught to view as mistakes. And they may or may not suffer. They probably will, because suffering is inescapable in life. So bad news, good news. Bad news is your kids will suffer. They will suffer, and conscious parenting will not keep them from suffering. What it will do, though, is, like I said before, it'll maybe make it less likely they'll hide things from you, less likely that they'll lie to you. And if they make mistakes that harm them or that cause them suffering, they will want you in that conversation. Right?
Yeah. And the only thing I have to add to that is Sal said something last night that we never came back to that really stuck out to me, that she talked about in her teen years, is that for the church, she said, safety in repression for her sexuality. And as we know with the backfire effect, there's so many things that we think in the church we will find safety in repressing them. But if you're not able to talk about them in healthy ways, whether that's masturbation or porn or gender identity, sexual orientation, myriad of different things, there is no safety in repression. It's going to come out in either an unhealthy way, or you're going to live a really long, unfulfilling life, hiding secrets and hurting the people that you care most about, going 10 or 15 years in a marriage and then having to come out to your husband that you've been repressing something really long ago. So yeah, well, it's super difficult. It's like, I feel like John was describing in our Mormon culture, it's really difficult to get off of this purity model of just this don't do it model. It's harder to get to work to actually lean in, like we always like to say, and do the hard work and be emotionally vulnerable with your kids and have these discussions. But it just comes back to that whole, like, choose your hard. Like, either one's going to be hard. There's not safety in repression. Something's going to happen. That's going to be hard one way or the other. Or we could do this hard thing over here, and I choose that one. So,
yeah, I love that. And I would also just say, that distrust that you feel and the things you say about a 16-year-old brain, and your child feels that. And it's much harder for a child to trust themselves when the people that are, most present in their life are looking at them as depraved and looking at them as untrustworthy. Yeah. If what you're showing your child is, I'm feeling so much anxiety for you in this situation, how are they supposed to trust themselves? How are they supposed to feel?
Because that says I don't have confidence.
That's right.
in you.
It's
that
like
says you should be very
the
afraid.
person that loves me most, that has ushered me through this life, has no belief in me and is feeling all this anxiety that I may or may not feel at this point. And I love Natasha with regard to when she talks about this idea of sexual purity as something that, when you have an experience, it's like you have the purity taken away. Why aren't we looking at it as experience gained? Why is it not like some of those experiences that are normative, developmentally normal, that insights are gained that make it much less likely that once they hit college or once they're out of the house in this restrictive environment, it plays out in ways that are all the more dangerous? Like, why are we not looking at it as like, this is valuable insight for you to have? And it's at a time that I can offer you support. Like, I'm actually in your life to kind of help, walk you through it and to provide emotional support for you if you need it. Versus, and then lastly, how does love feel for you when it's a list? How does it feel for you when in this case, and this is something I'm still working on, because we start from in Mormonism as like, don't drink, don't smoke, don't, be sexual in any way with another human. We have all these don'ts that we see people through and we judge our children through. Well, how does that feel? Like, how does it feel being you in a love relationship like that? When you're being held to that, does that feel like love to you? That to me, is something that it disrupts me. It disrupts me truly seeing and loving the human being in front of me, and realizing that we do that outside Mormonism too. Sometimes it evolves into like go to college or getting married, or that our kids should have children. But I have just found a tremendous freedom and a larger love in being able to really be a little bit more aware of the lists I have with regard to like expectations or, what it should look like for another human in my life, for me to feel safe, for me to feel like they're healthy, and to really watch that.
Love it. Reading the comments, Matthew Shakespeare, my my friend with lots of honey and honeybees, Matt. Matt is with us, and Matt wrote, excellent episode. I needed this today. Love you people. Shout out to Matt Shakespeare. He and his wife, Elizabeth, have an amazing episode. And just want to call people's attention to that. So, so many great comments and questions. I do want to share one. Kelly Sparks Salchley writes, my daughter says she will never forget that I immediately supported her when she came out to me as gay when she was 14. If I'd followed my upbringing, I couldn't have done that.
Beautiful.
So that's awesome, Kelly. Congratulations. And that's just the example. Kids will remember those moments that we trust them. I know that recently Winston, our son, just decided he wanted a motorcycle. That is my worst fear. If I have obsessive compulsive disorder, it's around the safety, the physical safety, and probably the emotional safety of my kids. And I wanted to fight him. My emotional reaction was no, fight it, resist it. And I just knew that was going to drive him away. He would probably get one anyway, go ride with his friends, go buy one and hide it. I just knew that my only choice was to support him and accept him. And, you know, we get, and because I think we respected that choice of his and we stayed emotionally connected with him, we asked him to take some safety courses, which he did. We asked him, you know, to get licensed, which he did. And he's been willing to talk to us and connect with us and help reassure us that he's doing his best to stay safe. Now, that doesn't mean Winston won't eventually get in an accident. Accidents happen. But I do think we handled that better than we would have a few years ago. What do you think, Margi?
Likely that is true.
Yeah.
And we're still in the process of that. I think it's a tough thing. We all walk with that vulnerability of our children in life and losing our children every day, whether they drive a car or with whatever they're doing. And so, you know, a motorcycle definitely amps that up. And he's going to be 18 in a couple months. And
yeah. Would we rather him learning motorcycle safety while he's in the home, or have him leave home angry at us that we were so controlling and we never even had the discussion about motorcycle safety?
And every child's different here. Winston has always been a fierce, like a human with a fierce will, who has a lot of reaction around control. And we have learned when we have trusted him, leaned in for conversations, and centered around connecting, he does an amazing job. And so learning to just sort of where he is wanting us to back off, learning to back off and let him take it has actually really been amazing for us.
Kathy writes, please more Margi. This is wonderful. Thanks. So thanks, Kathy.
Yeah, thank you. That's lovely.
So Margi, this has been a great episode so far. I know that you have to leave at some point. So are there some final points you want to make? So Margi's got a few more points she wants to make. And then we're going to do this weekly or every other week. We're going to have Natasha on more, but there'll be more. But Margi, what are some final
I thought it might be helpful to kind of identify the components of emotional milkshake. So let's say, so I can do that first, John, or I can say when we would use them. Do you care which order?
Go ahead. Do
okay.
Both. Yeah.
So what are the?
So this is the components of emotional.
Yeah,
milkshakes.
like if a parent is noticing, okay, I am in this place with a child, or I do really feel like I want to make this a practice in my parenting with my kids. How would I go about that? Some things that I just highlighted from the situation with my dad that I felt was kind of being in a present and grounded place. So that means on some level, you're not thinking about a ton about the day. You're not emotionally processing something heavy, that you yourself are kind of in the moment and feeling emotionally grounded, that you're in a state of acceptance. So you're not in a place of fighting what's happening. So this goes to, with my dad, I clearly was in a place of not eating. He was in a place of accepting. What he was doing was not fighting me on that. He was offering something. So being in a state of acceptance with whatever situation you have with your child, that connection is the focus, not fixing, Not sharing your opinion about what the child is doing. This is hard. Not sharing a concern with your child. It's literally connecting with your child's experience and having space for that. Another part is active listening. So if your child does decide to share, that you're in a state to listen and to participate in a way that's very, very safe. So communicating emotional safety within that, where you can validate their desires and their experiences. And then lastly, the intention of that, and to really connect with the intention when you are going to have this experience is, I am here to remind you how lovable you are. That's what I want this to be about. So there's just no mistaking. Every action, everything I say, what I do, it's centered around that value. So those are just some kind of guideposts as to like what you're looking for when you decide to show up with an emotional milkshake. And usually that's our presence in some way.
Yeah. So like learning to be present, like there were several questions in the comments about like, what if I'm triggered? What if I'm angry? What if our kids are angry? What do I do if I'm flooded?
That's great. Yeah, that happens. And so we always take care of ourselves because it allows us to take care of those we love. So yes, if you are emotionally flooded, let's do that one first. If you're emotionally flooded, please take a break. And that would look like if you're driving home with your child and there's a meltdown or things start to go awry, it would look like this. Hey, I really love you. I'm noticing that, right now, emotionally, things are rising for me. And I really care about you and I care about this conversation. So I'm going to just take a break. Let's just listen to some music for a bit. And I'm going to come back to you when I'm in a place to really give you the time and attention that you deserve. That's an example of a break. Yes. And then go do things as you can to soothe yourself, comfort yourself, as you can. Oftentimes we have a lot of things going on, but take that break and then you go back to the child, usually within the same, don't let it drag on for the child. Try and kind of circle back. If the child is having an emotional breakdown, then what you can say is, hey, I'm noticing, I don't want the you are, but I'm noticing things are getting heated. I wonder if we shouldn't take a break. I really care about this conversation and I care about you. So let's just take a break for now. And, you go do something that you want to do. I'll do something. And let's do this in a way where we don't hurt each other, because I don't want to hurt you. I really care about you.
Yeah. And we all just have to understand kind of basic brain structure. We have, let's just say there's two main brain regions that are relevant here. The amygdala, which is the emotional center of the brain, call it the lizard brain, call it the monkey brain. That's the brain where the fight, flight, or freeze center of the brain. And then we have the cerebral frontal cortex, or the executive functioning part of the brain, which is where we're calm and we're rational and we're logical, right? And if you know anything about the structure of the brain, when your amygdala is triggered, when you're triggered into fight, flight, or freeze mode, your IQ drops something like 15 to 20 points. It drops. You are dumber. And so if you argue with your kid, if you find yourself getting trapped and caught up in anger, in fear, and in argumentation, you're dumb at that point, and you're just going to probably likely harm your relationship with your child. And so that's where things like mindfulness, meditation, secular Buddhism trains you to be more aware when you get emotionally triggered, so that you can cut that off and stop it before you do the damage, right?
Yes.
And that's the idea, is stop, pause, call a timeout with your kid. And guess what you're doing, Carah, when you talked about this, about reparenting, right?
Yeah.
Breaking the cycle. What is a better gift you can give your child than to model for them, not that you never get mad, because guess what? They're going to get mad and upset in their lives. So what's better than being a parent that never loses their temper? That's not the goal. The goal is not to never get angry and upset as a parent. The goal is that when your kid sees you getting upset, They see you catch yourself. They see you stop. They see you calm the F down, and they see you call time out and say, I love you so much that even though I'm worked up, I notice that I'm upset, even though I'm worked up, I'm going to pause, go take care of my emotions, and then come back and talk to you later when I can do so in a healthy way. You model that. You're not only not doing damage to your kid, you're not only not violating the emotional intimacy and the emotional connection that you have with your kid, you're teaching them through embodiment to take care of their own emotions in a healthy way at a later time. And Carah's nodding, so I know that I just must have said something good. What?
I have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 1-year-old, and it's me and Aaron's everyday life trying to get the behavior that we need out of our kids without yelling at them every single day. And I think the biggest thing that's helped me in the last couple months is just accepting, it's literally since our grounding episode, accepting that, one, yelling at my kids is pretty much not an option for me because it's water on a grease fire is what I have to keep reminding myself, especially with my 5-year-old. If she wants to be late to school because she wants to put on the socks she wants to put on, no amount of yelling at her will make her go faster. It will only make her fall on the ground and cry. And so I have to figure out a way to get creative with it. It
slows you down more, right?
And it slows us down 5 times more. And I'm an adult. I'm smart enough to know that. And so I figure out other creative ways to do it. And I play a little game, with this is a great tip, by the way. This is just me adding a great tip. I invented this a couple years ago. I ask my kids if they want to do it fast or slow. And then they get to choose whether it's putting on clothes or doing the dishes with me, whatever we're doing. As if we do it slow, I do it in slow motion, and that makes them laugh. And then if they say fast, then I go da 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 da, and it distracts them. Everything to kids feels like it needs to be novel. It needs to be new and interesting. And the main way that they like to make things interesting is to make it difficult and to make it like have a fight and have force. But if I make it into some type of fun game, that's the novelty that they crave out of me and Aaron. But the point that I just wanted to make is I have to accept my worst fears as just going to be part of the game. Every single day I accept that we might be late to school, and that's not the end of the world. Yeah. Every single day I'm like, because no amount of yelling will make them be on time. So I'm going to let this take as long as it takes, and they're going to understand that the more important thing is the connection, and the more that we connect, the faster that they go when they're ready for school. No amount of, we wake up at this time, this needs to be done, screaming and yelling, everyone get out the door. It's never worked. It never will work. So I've just accepted whether it's we're going to be late for school or we were going to go out shopping, but the stores are closing because you're having this tantrum. I just am accepting we're going to have to do it another day. Yeah. Like it's not the things that get me frustrated and frazzled with my kids. It's because I've worked it up in my head that it's like the end of the world. And I have to remember it's not. The connection, the emotional connection, that just being there with them, all the things we talked about, that's the foundation. And then everything else is just kind of, peripheral.
Yes, I so relate to that. I really remember when my children were young, this idea of if there was any type of agenda they could feel, bam, it was like over. And then as they got older, it was like if there was any type of expectation. Now, some of my kids did better with, what would I say, not better. Some of my children worked with expectation to their own inner life detriment. So there was a cost no matter what. So I have children that with that sort of external expectation, it was like, nope, there's an expectation, definitely not. Now you've lost it, right?
Totally.
And then I had children that were all about the expectation to the point that they were dying inside, and neither, we don't want either of those, right? So children, I just feel like on a basic level are always asking us to love bigger. Are always asking us, do you love me now? How about now? Is your agenda more important than me now? Mm-hmm. Can you see me now? Or is getting to school more important? Do you see me now? Or is it really that you want me to be great at school? Do you see me now?
Haven't you said, and I'm sure this didn't originate with you, that our children, maybe this is ShefaliTsabary who said this, that our children are our greatest spiritual practice. Mm-hmm.
That was Eckhart Tolle. I don't know.
Is it marriage or children?
Do you remember that, Carah? Mm-mm. Did you ever listen to the Oprah?
Yes.
Okay.
I listened to it 3 times.
Yes. I know. I'm that's something you can just always be. But in one of those episodes, I remembered a woman calling in about, I feel like it was like a toddler. and just saying, oh my gosh, my child, and the meltdowns and the tantrums, and I'm losing it all the time. And I want to live this way. I want to live the way you're talking about. I want to, yes to all the principles. And I can't make it through my morning, with this child. And Eckhart Tolle was just like, I just loved his answer, because it was like, that child is your spiritual teacher. That's all that's enough. That's more than enough, is your relationship with this child right now. I loved that. This idea of it's in your life. It's not on Sundays. It's not outside your life that you're going to find kind of that growth and that, insight. It's inside it.
Yep. Those podcasts are life-changing. I'll put those in the show notes as well.
That's a great idea. Well, lastly, should I go over some of the situations that might...
Yeah, so what's this section? Situations that what?
So for here, it's like, when would you use an emotional milkshake? And by the way, emotional milkshakes can show up, like right now we do a lot of one-on-one times with our children. We have, 3 independent kind of young adult children right now and a child about to leave home. So right now we do some family activities, but a lot of times it's John taking out a child. It's me spending time one-on-one with a child, and just the intention is to be fully present, to listen and to communicate how much we love and trust them to kind of find their way in life, right? So that structure is really a flexible one, and it can also just be in like little moments in the day, right, with children at home. So it's a super flexible structure. What I would say is some ideas that came to me about when you might want to use this in particular, this idea of an emotional milkshake, would be with teen and young adults as they differentiate from you. So particularly when they're choosing things that may include different values than you, where they are absolutely individuating from you, right? That's a great time to do emotional milkshakes. Another time would be anytime.
Because they're supposed to. Like, we don't understand that part of the job, like literally if you could call a developmental stage in life a job, part of the job of the teenager is to learn and practice separation from the parents. Yeah. Because by 18, they're going to be leaving. So why not have 15, 16, 17 be them practicing
exploring,
separating while they're under a safe roof? So it's their job to separate. So that's a great time to practice the emotional milkshakes, because as soon as they leave the house, they're doing whatever the freak they want, and you can't control it anymore. So why not have them practice with their training wheels while you're connected to them emotionally? So it's a great time.
That's right. And where you don't create deprivation. Imagine like a household where there's no sugar. And then it's like, oh, you're going to go out on your own. Like, what's that dynamic like?
They'll just eat sugar all day long.
As opposed to
just eat Taco Bell. They'll just eat Taco Bell all day long.
As opposed to sugar is, yes, it is part of life. So, yep, as you're growing up, you're going to have some of those experiences, and we integrate those into you kind of growing up. And not only is it like the job of children, but for me, it's an indicator of health. If I have a teenager that's individuating, and I don't relate to this myself because I did not individuate. Like there's this thing about trying to take care of your parents, be something for your parents as a teen, that actually isn't really developmentally healthy. But for many of us, that's what we did. So it can feel like abandonment. It can feel very scary as teens move away or do that thing where they shift away and then kind of sometimes shift in and then shift away and then shift in. It can feel very unsettling. But to me, I always look at it as like a success. You have a child that is actually like able to individuate and feel themselves without feeling like they have to take care of you. And that's actually what we want. We want children that are not taking care of parents.
I love it. Okay, well, go ahead.
Okay, so the next one is when the relationship with your child feels distant, strained, damaged, or in some sort of control dynamic.
So so many times kids cut off their parents when they're depressed or really in distress. That's when they're angry at their parents, they cut off their parents, and they're in real distress. And that's when you feel like they're beyond being reached. It's kind of like that book with the mom who holds the kid in her lap.
Love You Forever?
Yeah, it's kind of like that, right? And what does the mom do in that story?
Yeah. I think the idea is repair here is sometimes in control dynamics, your child loses trust in you. And I think so the idea is in all these cases that some repair needs to happen. The emotional milkshake, doing that consistently can provide kind of some of that repair. Another time is when your child is suffering, just like I was suffering. And I know my dad could see it. My dad was a psychiatrist after all. He treats people with eating disorders and knew he could not treat me, his daughter. And I know he probably really wanted to. So it's just him identifying my suffering and, you know, being able, this was the thing that he chose to offer. Another situation that I thought would be really interesting, I'm curious if you guys agree, is just if you have a child that in any way their brain or behavior is outside the system, I just feel like this would be really helpful. Because to me, that just means the way they show up in the world, at school or in your home, or they're going to be viewed likely as a problem, because that's how we kind of do it societally. And so really providing children with a lot of will or, high energy, attention, neurodiversity, whatever it is, providing them these moments of absolute love and magic in your eyes for them. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I love it. Oh.
And then lastly, I have when your child is disconnected from themselves, which happens as children grow up. It's very common in teens to be able to identify certain times of life or young adults where your children are struggling either with coping or struggling with connecting with themselves. And this can be particularly difficult because they can feel like they're not reachable for you and they're not reachable for them. So that's another time for that. And then lastly, anytime you feel like you've tried all the things and nothing's worked.
When all else fails.
That's right. So we'll just come full circle. When all else fails is also another time to kind of where this might be a helpful kind of tool. So I hope this is helpful.
It is. And you're so heartfelt. You're so lovely. So many people in the audience are just like, more Margi all the time. Just give Mormon stories over to Margi. That's basically.
I want a Margi all the time. Margi all the time. Margi all the
It all comes back to 80s music. Everything
really
comes back. Everything comes back to 80s music.
That is true.
Yeah.
So much does.
Yep.
So much should.
So some of our Facebook commenters, Karen Auger was asking for us to post more content about conscious parenting. Carah did that. And we're going to have show notes for those of you who are joining us after the live stream. Show notes are already up on YouTube.
On YouTube.
Okay. And also on the blog post. If any of you come to this audio or video later, either check the show notes on YouTube or go to the blog page for this on mormonstories.org. And we'll have links to Shefali's books, to our previous episode on the gift of the Mormon faith crisis for conscious parenting. That's part of why we do this, is to just tell you to freaking go to mormonfaithcrisis.com and watch the 80 free hours of content we've already shared, because there's so much there that would be helpful.
There's links to that right now, to the Gift of Mormon Faith Crisis. So I made it very easy. You have no excuse.
Thank you, Carah.
Should be right there.
Thank you.
And then if you really are like, what should I listen to after this? I need to go do the dishes. I posted a link in the show notes to the Eckhart Tolle podcast with Oprah. Life-changing. John told Bill Reel about it. Bill Reel told me about it on his podcast. I've told other friends, Mormon friends as well, and it's changed their life. It was exactly what I needed leaving the church. Instrumental in all of the growth. The woman that's before you today is because of this podcast series and a lot of Eckhart Tolle.
That's saying everything.
Definitely
What
need
else?
to,
What else do you need to know? What
else?
If that's what made Carah Burrell, then I'm interested.
We all should be interested. We all should be interested.
I love when Margi looks at the camera, like breaks the fourth wall or whatever. And
Carah Burrell, folks.
It's true.
No, like seriously, I don't want to insult Mormons or the Mormon Church or believing Mormons, but like we were all told, go to the temple more and more and more, and you'll finally figure out what it means and you'll derive more value from it. When it comes to Eckhart Tolle and his book, A New Earth, and that series between Eckhart Tolle and Oprah, that's actually true. The more you watch that, the more value you'll derive from it, or the more you listen to the Eckhart Tolle book, A New Earth. Like how many times do you think you've read A New Earth, Margi?
Like not enough still.
Yeah. And I come back to it every year and I learn something new every year. And it's the type of thing where you don't just learn it. It's if you continually re-immerse, it's kind of like what we thought or were taught the scriptures would be. Yeah. And maybe for some people, the scriptures really is this. For me, it wasn't. But with something like A New Earth, with Secular Buddhism podcast, the more you expose yourself to the content, even in small doses, kind of like microdosing content, the more value you're going to get for it, for not just weeks or months, but for years and for decades on your life.
Yeah, just like your brain is going through different stages of development. And I've told people, everyone that I've told about, different podcasts, Eckhart Tolle, whether it's Mormon stories or whatever, you understand that some people are not ready to absorb information at certain stages in their life. And so just like in the journey that our brain goes on, we'll pick up different good nuggets along the way. And that's how I view that podcast series. I listened to it 3 times and I felt like I learned something completely different every time I listened to it, because I was just at a different stage of what my brain needed at that point.
I love it.
Yeah, I so relate to that.
All right. Well, Margi, you're lovely. Thank you for sharing info about your sweet dad. And I know the anniversary of his 5th year of passing is a tender time for you. So you're a sweetheart.
Yeah, this felt like a nice way to kind of honor him. So thank you for hanging with me to do that. I do want to just say a final thing about parenting maybe before, is just, parenting is inherently vulnerable. And if it feels that way, and if it brings up a lot of fear and anxiety, you come by that honestly for so many reasons. Pick your layer, whether it was religion, your family upbringing, culturally, we're reinforced because we are a Judeo-Christian culture still, largely. So, yeah, be gentle with yourself. And then this idea about conscious parenting is the healing of yourself through relationship with your child. And I think just an offering that you deserve that. You deserve the time and attention to heal yourself and minimize damage to your children in the process.
I love it. Well, thanks, Margi.
That's all. That's all we got.
Thanks, Carah.
Yeah, and thanks for the super chats. We got a super chat from...
Which is a donation on YouTube, right?
YouTube, yeah. Just people being so sweet and donating to support the podcast. Thank you, Catherine, and thank you, This Blind Chick Talks, for your donations. Yeah.
And thanks, Carah, for waking up early. We had a show until late last night, and you woke up early.
You are hardworking people.
Yeah. So look forward to Lena and Sal. Should be coming out next week. They came out once. They're coming out again on a Mom Stories episode. But we did a really long, good podcast with them last night, and I probably got home at like 11 p.m.
Wow.
Final plea, and this is really important. There are many people who can't afford to support Mormon Stories podcast or this series, and that's why we give this away for free. No guilt trip if you're not in a position to support this content. However, if you value this content, these videos, these podcast audios, if you value this content and you are in a position to support us, we like to pay our people. We like to pay Carah. We like to pay Margi. We like to pay Gerardo. We like to pay Natasha. All of this equipment and these resources are expensive. So if you are in a, and we lose donors every month because people fall on financial hard times, or they lose interest, or people just move on. And we always need to replenish those who drop out. And so if you value this content and if you want to see it continue, we need your support. One way to support Margi or me or Natasha doing this positive faith healing and growth content is to go to MormonFaithCrisis.com and click on the donate button there. And if you could become a monthly donor or a monthly subscriber to the Gift of the Mormon Faith Crisis content series on Mormon Stories podcast, we'll use that money to pay people like Natasha, like Margi, to come on and share this positive content on Mormon Stories podcast. Because we do get that criticism, that feedback, Mormon Stories is too negative, or all you're doing is tearing things down. We don't like that feedback, and we're trying to provide positive, constructive, forward-thinking content to help you heal and grow after Mormonism. So if you want to put your money where your mouth is, if you value that content, please go to MormonFaithCrisis.com, click on the donate button, become a monthly donor, and we'll be able to keep bringing Margi and others like Margi on. That's how you can support us. It's all tax deductible in the U.S. It all goes through the Open Stories Foundation. We're transparent in our finances, and 100% of your donations will go towards this type of content. So please step up and support us. You can also support us at mormonstories@gmail.com, but we need your support to keep this going. So thanks for your support. If you already support us, and if you don't, please become a monthly donor. And also you can always donate through the super chat feature on YouTube. It's a little $sign in the chat window. Click on that, and you can donate. And there are other ways to support us. You can subscribe to us on all the platforms, Facebook or YouTube or Instagram or on TikTok. You can subscribe to us. You can comment. You can link to us. You can share links with other people. You can give us positive reviews on Apple Podcasts, because we always have haters tearing us down there on Apple Podcasts, or on the Mormon Stories Podcast Facebook page. That's a way you can support us if you can't afford, or even if you can, that's another way you can support us to keep this content alive. Anything I'm forgetting, Carah?
Thanks for watching.
Yeah.
Be good to each other.
Be kind to each other, love each other.
Differentiate, embody.
Be good to yourselves. Be gentle.
Yeah, be good to yourselves. And email us at mormonstories@gmail.com if you have any feedback you want to share. We like constructive feedback. We like feedback that says, hey, here's some things I love. Here's some things you ought to consider fixing. And here's some specific examples of how you can make things better.
Time codes are really helpful, too.
Yeah. Yeah, because sometimes people are like, John, I hate what you did here in this episode, or John, Carah, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you can provide us with actual time codes of, like, in this moment, this thing, John, you said, or this thing that Carah said, or this thing that Margi said, it was off-putting, or I didn't like it. If you can give us specific feedback, we can fix that kind of stuff. If it's just like, I don't like John, I don't like you, or John, you talk too much, or John, Carah, I don't like her and she talks too much, that feedback doesn't really help us. The more specific and constructive your feedback, the more we can learn and grow, because this job is effing hard. Is this job hard, Carah?
This job is so hard. I'm not like a coal miner or anything. Everything's relative. In terms of like mental stress to put out this content and read all of the comments and, be like, do I suck? I don't think so. So it's a very mentally taxing job. The Dehlins know. The Burrells are entering into this space. And so it's definitely mentally taxing. So compliment sandwiches are what we should be looking for. Right. So layer it in with some love too.
But also be specific. Don't just say, I hate all that you're doing and I'm going away now, taking my toys and going home. Give us constructive, specific feedback where we can change, and give us time to learn and grow. Because we're all in process, and Mormon Stories is always in flux. So we're trying new things. We're adding new voices. Give us time to learn and grow. Don't just like, oh, sorry, you made a change, so now I'm quitting. How helpful is that?
Not helpful at all.
Yeah.
And I think you should just donate if you have the means to do so. And if you can at least just share this content and hopefully glean what you can from it. And everything is just, it doesn't matter. Just, we're working on it, you guys. Just like support us on this trajectory forward. Just know that things are moving forward. We don't need too much criticism, just a little bit, not too much.
And Margi, will you come on again?
Yes, I'll come on again.
And again?
And again.
And again? We love you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Take care. Thanks for joining us. We love your comments. It always makes things better. So be good to each other. Love everyone. Take care. And we'll see you guys all again soon on another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. Bye, everybody.